Hello, how's everybody doing? I'm Jeremy Langlois here from Houmas House Estate and Gardens, and welcome to our little cooking demo that we've been doing every Thursday. Before we get started, I'd like to thank everybody who has either watched this live and or tuned in and liked, shared, commented, all that stuff. This has just been such a fun thing, and we're going to continue to do it. I hope y'all have been enjoying it. I saw some great messages on Facebook from some of our friends out there, and some people have actually showed me some pictures and tagged me on Facebook who have made some of our dishes, like our biscuit curry pumpkin crawfish corn that we did last week. I saw all those, and that was just such a cool thing to see, and it really makes doing these so much fun that we all just kind of continue to get through this together, and we just have a lot of fun cooking, which I love to do. So we're going to get started now, and the dish that we're doing today is probably our best-selling dish from our Carriage House restaurant, which is our restaurant opening at the evenings at Houmas House, and it is called Shrimp Aubergine. Now the origin of this dish is, well, shrimp. We're using some beautiful shrimp, and then aubergine is the French word for eggplant. So we kind of combine those together, and it's a dish of fried eggplant topped with some sauteed shrimp and a wonderful little cream sauce. So we're going to go ahead and let's get cooking. We're in here in probably my favorite room in all of Houmas House, which is our old kitchen. This is our old antique kitchen, which is original to our house, dates back to 1773, older than the Louisiana Purchase, and just such an incredible room and one of my favorite places in all the plantation. We still use it for our operation when you have a wedding here. Actually, we serve the soup to your wedding here at Houmas House right out of this room, and I just love it. My favorite room in all of the estate. So we're cooking shrimp today, and before we get started, I just wanted to quickly talk about shrimp, and we have some decisions to make if you're going to make this at home. We have some absolutely beautiful Gulf shrimp that we're going to be using, and before we start to cook them, because once we start cooking, all this is actually going to come together very quickly, but you have some decisions of how you want to make it at home. Do you want to leave the shrimp whole with the shell on them and then have to peel them? While you get great flavor from the shell and the head, I prefer to go ahead, and what I like to do anytime I'm using a shrimp dish is I like to go ahead and peel the shrimp, but I sometimes will leave the head on the shrimp, both for presentation and for flavor. There's a lot of flavor in the head of the shrimp and a lot of fat behind the head, which adds a great bit of flavor, and so I sometimes like to keep the head on and keep the tail on. However, whenever we do a dish like this where we're going to be simmering the shrimp, as the shrimp start to cook, sometimes those heads will fall off, which is fine. They're going to add a great flavor to your sauce. However, now you got these heads that are loose in there, and you're not really going to eat them, so they're sometimes going to get in the way. So what I like to do for this dish is I'm just going to take that head off, and then of course we're going to devein it. Just put a quick little slice on the back of it and remove that little vein. We don't want that. So that just comes right off, and now we've got some shrimp ready to go. Now what we're going to do is we have two things going on. We have our skillet ready to go, and we have a little, I brought, just for demonstration purposes, I brought this little household deep fryer, which is perfect at home. This is a great tool. Of course, if you're frying at home, you could have a pot on the stove where you're going to put your oil in, and you're going to want to heat it up to 350 degrees with a thermometer. But if you just use something like this, what's really great is it's got its own temperature control. We'll talk about the temperatures a little bit later, but it will heat the oil up, and then it will kick off once it gets to temp, and it will maintain that temperature, which just makes cooking and frying at home really simple. So if you don't have one of those, this is just a simple, easy way to go. But let's start cooking our shrimp first. I have a skillet. I'm going to turn it up to high. We're going to get a little olive oil into the skillet. Olive oil, cooking oil, butter, anything like that. We're just going to do a quick saute. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to add the shrimp towards the end, because we're actually going to poach them in this liquid that we're going to do. But we're first going to start with a little bit of onions, a little bit of some celery, and a little bit of garlic. Let those just kind of start to come up to a sizzle, and let them just start to saute a little in that pan. Now, one thing about this dish is, just get that a little stir. One thing about this dish is we are going to add bell peppers. You know, we got our trinity going, like I think every dish we've done so far with onion, celery, bell pepper. But for this dish, what I'd like to do is I want to actually highlight the bell peppers as part of this dish. So look at these bell peppers, guys. I got some just beautiful colored bell peppers. I love cooking with a lot of assortment of different color. All the bell peppers roughly taste the same. Sometimes your red and your more colorful bell peppers might be a little bit more sweeter than a green bell pepper, but roughly the same. You can interchange them. Anytime you're cooking, the colors don't necessarily matter. But what I really like about all these different colors is just how beautiful they look. And so what I want to do is I want to cook this, the onions and the celery and the garlic first to kind of sweat them or cook them lightly until they're a little translucent, because I still want to keep the beautiful vibrancy of these bell peppers. And then what I've decided to do with these bell peppers is I've cut them in what's called a julienne cut, which is just a very fancy French way of saying we've cut them into little strips, because we do want to highlight them. And they will become a part of the dish as well, where you really have some nice big chunks in it. But if you wanted to dice your bell peppers, you could definitely do that as well. So I'm going to drop these bell peppers in and kind of have them get sauteing next after I've gotten those onions going. I'm going to let those cook just quickly, giving them a little stir. And look what we got there. They're starting to sweat, and every time I say sweat, my wife asks me, why do you keep saying sweat? Well, sweat just means you saute something until they cook a little translucently. The opposite of that would be to caramelize, where you cook over a high heat to really get a nice browning color on the outside of it, which we're not looking to do here. We're looking to keep those bright, vibrant, bright colors. So that's why we're going to just lightly cook them in the beginning. Once we get to this point, I'm constantly adding or not adding a little bit of oil, just based on the fact that I'm going to make just a little bit of roux. So I've added a little bit more oil only because I'm going to add just a dash of flour right into the skillet, enough to pick up that oil I just added, and this is going to be the thickener for our sauce. Just enough. I'm not measuring. If you know me in the kitchen, I am not a measurer. I like to cook on feeling or instinct. I don't like to, to me it's not fun anymore. Now all of a sudden I got to measure each little thing. We're not doing that. We're just cooking. Just adding enough just to add it in, and then we can always play with it. If our sauce gets too thick, we can add a little bit more liquid. If it's too thin, we can add a little bit more flour to thicken it up. So we've got a little flour in there. I'm going to go in with a little bit of seafood stock. This is a shrimp stock that we have in the restaurant. Again, a great tool at home is the different broths that they have at the grocery store, all fantastic. So any place, of course, the best thing you can do is if you want to save these shells, throw them in a pot with some onions and some garlic and some carrots and some herbs, and boil that water for an hour or so and strain all that. If you want to do all that, well, yeah, the flavor is going to be unreal, and that's what we do here at the restaurant. However, if you don't want to go through that trouble, something great at home is just to go to the grocery store. Typically in the soup section, there's going to be broths in different canned broths or broths in little boxes, and those are fantastic. It's just better than water. It's going to give you a nice flavor. So we're going to add that broth in, and then now we're going to add just a little bit of heavy cream. And I say a little bit, pretty good bit, a couple cups, but this is enough for a few people. And the cream is just going to add a richness and kind of bring all this together. So we're going to let that come up to a boil. Now let's just talk about that real quickly. We added flour in earlier, and that flour picked up the oil, and that basically makes a quick roux. Oil and flour, that's a roux. The reason we use a roux is to thicken any sauce that we're cooking. So since we added the flour, we now made a roux, and what we want to do now is have this come up to a boil. A roux will not thicken a liquid until it boils. So to know how thick something is, you have to wait for it to come to a boil and then decide, is it thick enough to what I like? Now, what I typically don't like with a lot of my sauces is I prefer not to have my sauces too thick and goopy. I would rather them to be very light. So as it comes up to a boil, that's what we got here. However, as I said earlier, if it was too thick, you can very easily add a little bit more stock, a little bit more cream, or a splash of water, and that will thin down your sauce just to the consistency that you're looking for. I'm going to come back now and I'm going to start to season this with salt and pepper. I always like to season in the beginning, just to kind of give it a base flavor, and then at the last part, I like to finish with just adjusting my seasonings to finish them off. Now this is kind of coming together really great. Now again, this is very quick. Now that we're at this point, I'm actually going to start to put some of these shrimp right into the sauce last second. Now again, if you were doing this at home, you can actually do this all pretty much last second if you had some guests, where you just put, you get all this going, you have everything prepped up like I do here, and then you can just throw it all together, or you can actually make this sauce ahead of time, and then cool it off, and do everything but add the shrimp, because we're not looking to overcook the shrimp, so we're just going to put them in last second, and we're actually going to poach the shrimp in this liquid that we have going on, this bell pepper cream sauce that we're making. So we're just going to kind of let those simmer in there. We're going to turn them. Now, man, let me tell you, whenever I first started cooking, and if you're someone new to cooking, I think shrimp is a really great dish that you can really start with, because shrimp are just so easy to cook. And what I like about shrimp is they have their own way. Nature has its own way of letting you know when a shrimp is perfectly cooked. You know, they start off and the shrimp are beautiful and kind of gray, but as they cook, they start to curl and get pink. So once they get to that point, that's nature's way of telling you that these shrimp are perfectly cooked. So we're just, and it doesn't take long. These shrimp here are only going to take a few minutes to cook in here. But however, you do want to be careful. You don't want to overcook shrimp. If I were to just keep boiling them for several minutes after the point where they've curled and turn pink, well, then they kind of start to shrink and become rubbery. And we don't want that. We just want to lightly cook them, and that's why we're putting the shrimp in last second. Now, while that's going, I'm actually going to come and I'm going to turn my fire down, and I'm just going to let those simmer. And every now and then, I'm going to give it a little stir, and I'm going to toss those shrimp and flip them just to make sure they're evenly cooking on all sides. And now we're going to go over to frying our eggplant over here. So what we have is I've taken an eggplant here and I've peeled it, and then I've cut them into little discs about a ½ inch thick. And that's just a great size for frying. Some questions that we get are, do you peel your eggplant? That's personal preference. The outside is totally edible. Oftentimes, whenever we fry, sometimes we peel them, sometimes we don't. What I like for this particular dish is I like to peel them only because it allows the crust to evenly stick all the way around the eggplant. However, if you were to not peel them, you would have a little band of the skin as well, which is fine too. Personal preference, whatever you like. So what we're going to do before we bread them, we're going to talk about just the deep frying process and how to just get really perfect fried food. There's a couple key things that you want to know when frying that can make or break any dish that you're frying. Number one is clean oil, clean oil. And this is fresh oil that we poured right into our little our tabletop fryer. And what's going to happen is after you fry, if you were to save this, well, those little bits of flour or whatever you're frying are going to stay in there. It's going to turn your oil dark, and then over time, the oil will actually start to take on some of those burnt flavors. So if you're frying something in old oil, then the batter that you're frying will actually start to take on some of those burnt flavors, and we don't want that. Then we want to talk about temperature. You have to be very careful with this. This is set to 350 degrees. There's a great little thermometer on here, or a thermostat on here, and it lets me know by turning on the light when it's on. However, perfectly fried food is almost always best at 350 degrees. However, one thing I want you to be aware of is as we place ingredients into our oil, the oil is naturally going to lose its temperature because you're taking something that's not 350 degrees and putting it in here, it's going to drop your temperature. So depending on what you're frying, what I like to do is actually heat my oil to 350 degrees and give it just a slight turn, a little bit more, just to compensate for that. So now it's heating up to 355 degrees. So when I drop my food in there and the temperature drops, well, now I'm still above that 350 degree range. You with me? Let me know if you're not. We're happy to answer any questions. And then once we're at that, we also don't want to overcrowd our fryer. So we're going to go, so we don't want to put too much in at once because it'll all stick together and it'll just be a mess and it'll drop the temperature of your oil. So I have my batter ready. I have my eggplant sliced and ready to go. I have just some eggs with a splash of water in it for our eggplant. This is just, I cracked 3 eggs, put a quick splash of water in it, mix it around. And then I have here, this is seasoned corn flour. You can find this at the store. Many stores have a pre-seasoned mix ready to go. Those are typically fantastic. Use that. If not, you can just go ahead and buy the unseasoned corn flour or cornmeal, but I prefer corn flour. Cornmeal is a little more coarser texture. And then you can season it however you like. Salt, pepper, cayenne pepper, granulated garlic. Those are your seasonings you typically put in it. But if you can find a pre-made mix that you like the flavor of, that's fantastic. So what I like to do for this particular dish is I like to go egg wash into my flour, and then just so I have a really good batter for this, I go back to the egg wash, I double dip it, back to the flour, and then into the deep fryer. So let's do another one. Egg wash, corn flour, back into the egg wash, and then back into the corn flour. Now I'm going to do one more. Egg wash, corn flour, and then double batter. And then I see they're simmering away, and that's great. If I were to have put an eggplant in and we would have gotten no simmer, then that means that the oil wasn't hot enough, and we don't want that. If, let's say the oil was 250 degrees or something like that, not hot enough, what would happen is you're not going to get a crispy fry on your batter, and because the oil is of a low temperature, it'll actually start to soak into that flour, and it would start to wash off, and it's just not going to work well. So it's really important to make sure that your oil is at 350 degrees, and we don't want to overcrowd the fryer as well. And then what's going to happen is, as it fries, we're just going to lightly turn it every now and then, and just really start to get some good color and some good crust on the outside of that eggplant. Just let it fry away, but the main thing is be careful. This is really hot oil. Either use a spider strainer, which is something like this, to get the oil out of, to move your eggplant around, or a pair of tongs as well. One thing you want to be careful with tongs is sometimes, I've had before, some of that hot oil will stick to the tongs itself, and you got to be careful because that is very hot oil that we're dealing with there. We don't want you to get burned. So let's come back to the shrimp just to finish them off. As you can see here, I want y'all to look at this, guys. The shrimp itself, just like I tell you, nature has a way of letting you know when shrimp are perfect. They start to curl and just become absolutely beautiful. Got a nice pink color on them, and the sauce is nice, not too thick, not too thin, just a great consistency. So now what I want to do is, I like to, anytime you're going to add fresh herbs or green onions or something like that, I like to do it right at the very end, and that's so you don't lose any of those herbs. They're very delicate. The leafy green vegetables are very delicate, so they'll just kind of overcook and turn into nothing once you mix them in. So if I were to put those in at the beginning, well then that would be like an army brown as opposed to like a bright green brown, or a bright green, which I like. And then just to finish it off, I'm going to come back with a little bit of salt and a little bit of cracked pepper. Let's mix those in. Let's go back to our eggplant. Just every now and then, you're just getting a good crust on the outside, and then just going to flip them just so they start to cook. Doesn't take long, y'all. It only takes about 2 to 3 minutes total as we're doing it. While these are still frying and we're almost done, I just want to mention a couple things going on over here at Houmas House. We are open for our carry-out menus. We're actually working on updating our takeout menus for the remainder of this time. That will be up and running 7 days a week from 11 till 7 p.m. Every day. You can go to our website to see information, but we have our takeout menu. And then what a lot of guests choose to do is, because there is so much room here on the place, we have on the property, that some people choose to dine and just eat right at our tables outside, which is fantastic. Love to have you. We'll also have people coming here daily. There's plenty of room for people to spread out and really enjoy these grounds. Just like today, the weather has been fantastic, and Houmas House is a great place. If you've never been out here before, or you're just looking to get out of the house, come spend the day with us. We'd absolutely love to have you. And then one thing that I'm excited to tell you about is we're looking at doing something special for Mother's Day. It's tentative based on weather. So because we can only do dine-out service, if we're able to, we're going to make the decision on our Facebook page by Monday. We're going to let everybody know, let all of our friends out there know, we're going to be doing a special Mother's Day menu for Mother's Day, which is not this Sunday, but the next, May 10th. and we're going to have information for that coming shortly. As far as all of our recipes, this recipe and all of our other recipes that we've done, we put them on our Facebook page as we do them, but we also have a great spot on our HoumasHouse.com website. If you go to the website and go drop down one of the menus that says resources, you'll see a tab that says recipes, and we have a collection of all of our recipes that we do with our newsletter, which we'd love for you to subscribe to. It's a great way to see all the information and all the things we have going on here at Houmas House, which is just a lot of things going on. And then if you're watching this today, one thing I'd love for you to do is we're doing a great thing. We just put in a red bridge that goes over our river road, and we're doing a contest on Facebook. Whoever comes up with the best name for the bridge, we're going to name that bridge. We'd love for y'all to participate in there. It's a lot of fun. So let's get back to the eggplant. Let's plate this bad boy up. So our eggplant is fried. As you see, we fried it for about 3 minutes. Beautiful. Yeah, there's no right or wrong. You're just looking to get a nice, beautiful golden brown on each side. And when you get to that point, you know the eggplant is perfect. So we go on to just some napkins or towels just to dab off some of that excess fry oil. And then we're going to lay down some of these eggplant medallions. And then we got to come back with all this beautiful shrimp that is cooked with this bell pepper cream sauce with a little bit of shrimp stock in it. And let me tell you, we can't, on a busy night in our Carriage House restaurant, we can't cook this fast enough. So let's get that on there. And that, I don't know about y'all, but that looks like lunch or dinner to me. I'm going to put a little bit of that sauce right on top. Look at that. A little bit of garnish. This is what I like to do because we have our Trinity. I like to come back with a little bit of celery. There y'all have it. That is our Carriage House Shrimp Aubergine fried eggplant with egg. Thanks for coming in. See y'all. Y'all stay safe out there. Bye-bye.